Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I've recently finished. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I've been wanting to do this for a while, been deciding if I want to experiment with putting out videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays maybe sometimes. I don't want to commit to 5 videos a week just yet, but I thought I'd put some out when I have some extra time, just to talk about the gaming landscape in general, about rumors, about the way companies and publishers are going. I just wanted to talk about the things that I see. I read so much about news about video games, I digest so much content around it. I just want to talk about my own thoughts about the gaming landscape. So today I want to talk about the Switch 2 and what it needs to do to be successful in the market. Now, Nintendo has had a storied history of home consoles doing well and not doing well. The original Nintendo and the Super Nintendo were great, high-selling consoles, but the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube didn't sell nearly as much as their competitors. They started to dip in their overall sales, despite the quality of their games, usually due to some of their decision-making. Nintendo 64 sticking to cartridges instead of moving on to CDs. The GameCube having little mini CDs and still recovering from the Nintendo 64's lack of sales, and then having more competition in the form of the Xbox and the PlayStation 2 doing huge numbers. So they repositioned themselves so well with the Wii. They outsold the PS3 and the Xbox 360 substantially, despite having stellar titles on both consoles, much better graphics, superior net play, but they just had the better gimmick overall. And they were positioned to really dominate the console market. Their handhelds were also doing really, really well, with the Game Boy Advance and then the Nintendo DS outselling almost every single console, period, just barely shy of the PlayStation 2 in overall sales. And then they had the 3DS doing pretty well, but they decided they were going to follow up the Wii with the Wii U. And we know why that failed for the most part. Bad marketing, probably more than anything. Calling it the Wii U was a confusing sequel name. People didn't know if it was a successor or if the gamepad was just an extra device for the original Wii. The Wii U didn't look much different from its predecessor. So I think they just missed the mark there. They had the games. They even had some third-party support. They finally had an HD console on the market, but they squandered their position. Fortunately, the Switch came out and was instantly the best console on the market due to its portability and some of the best games on the entire market at the time. And now they're positioned to hopefully keep their momentum going with the Switch 2. So I wanted to talk about what I think the Switch 2 needs to do in order to maintain Nintendo's dominance in the console market and maintain that relevancy and that momentum going forward. And we don't want to repeat the Wii U. I don't think they do either, clearly, and I don't think that they're planning on doing that. So here are a few things I think they need to do. First and foremost, we need just a straight-up Switch 2 for the name. The naming convention that they've used in the past with the Wii U and the new Nintendo 3DS and stuff, those need to die forever. I think Nintendo knows that. I think they could probably see that with the new 3DS models not selling as well and being confusing for the market. And the Wii U, obviously, they've learned their lesson from that. A simple Switch 2 would be fantastic. I could see them maybe doing a different name if it's like the same concept as the Switch, but now they have a new gimmick. Maybe they'll call it a different name. I think the Switch 2 is the most likely at this point. I think that's probably what most of us are banking on. And I think that works incredibly well. People know then it's a new console. It's the second console of the Switch iteration here. I think that would work extremely well. Next thing I would really like to see is an upgrade on the Switch Joy-Cons. I think they're fine. I think they're an iteration on the Wii remotes, but with better buttons and not having the 1, 2, and random things with the nunchuck. I like what they did with it, but they're a little bit too small. The Joy-Con drift is a huge problem. I even had to get mine fixed at one point. I know they don't want to repeat that. I think they need to improve that and make sure it doesn't happen on their new set of controllers. I think they need to be bigger because they're just a little bit too small. I like to play most of my games in handheld mode. I like to play stuff on the go with the Switch. It's the main gimmick here. I really like to have the Joy-Cons on either side. So I would like them to be more like a real controller, but just two halves of a big controller. I think the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is one of the best controllers on the market. So if they made it feel more like a broken in half Nintendo Switch Pro controller, I would be much happier with that. I think other people would be as well. There are some rumors that there's going to be an 8-inch screen and a bigger one than the original Nintendo Switch. If they do that, then the controllers are going to have to be a little bit bigger. So I think they're likely adjusting for that as we speak. Little one, we need to keep that kickstand from the Switch OLED The original kickstand is garbage, and they really need to make sure they keep that going. I like what they do with the OLED one. They don't need to change anything about that. If they want to make it even more sturdy, that's great, but I think what they have right now is fantastic. I love my kickstand on my OLED. Next, they need to keep the momentum going with third-party games. This will go in tandem with another point. They also need to improve the hardware in a fairly substantial way. I don't think they need to go all the way to PS5 level and Xbox Series X level of graphics. I think PS4 would be just fine, because I think the jump between those two consoles is not that substantial. The biggest thing is like the SSDs. So like the smaller loading times is the most use you see out of the PlayStation 5. But a lot of the games are made for cross-generational anyway, so you still see the annoying loading screen things, loading screen sequences where you like crouch underneath a rock and walk through to mask loading because they had to make it for a previous generation. So I actually don't think they need to have visuals that are on par. I think PS4 Pro maybe, or Xbox Series X, they can get up to that. I think that's completely fine, especially for a handheld console. You don't want to destroy your battery life by having it process so much data at the same time. But they do need to have much better visuals if they want to keep up with third-party support. There are so many games on the Nintendo Switch that are so pared down and abysmal experiences because the hardware is so limited. You have stuff like Mortal Kombat 1 that comes out and is absolutely awful. A terrible experience on the Switch. You have other games that come out that are fine, but don't play nearly as well as other consoles. And if you have multiple consoles like me, you're going to just go play them on the PlayStation 5 instead of the Nintendo Switch. Some games run remarkably well. Doom 2016 is a great example. Plays incredibly well on the Switch. I actually really like it there. I've played it there and I enjoyed it. The Witcher 3 remarkably does too. Even though they had to pare it down, it runs pretty darn well. The problem is developers probably don't want to be paring down their games so much. It's a big chore to put it to the Switch. They want to work with Nintendo, but I don't think they'll be as keen to do it on their next iteration of consoles if they have to do so much work to make it fit on the console in the first place, let alone run well. So they need to improve the visuals and the hardware capabilities of the Switch 2 so it can keep up with their third-party support that they've built up. They have a massive sales figures for the Nintendo Switch. It's on pace to likely eclipse even the PlayStation 2, which is insane, something I never thought we'd ever see. But to keep up that momentum, they really need to have that third-party support. Some people only play games on the Nintendo Switch, so if they only get a Switch 2, then it really ought to have that third-party support so they can still experience the games that other people are experiencing on other consoles as well. A little note, I don't know if this is a huge deal. It wouldn't be as much for me because I like to keep all my consoles, but I know it's a big deal for a lot of people. Backwards compatibility should be a no-brainer. You never know with Nintendo. They could either be backwards compatible for several generations, or they could ditch it entirely. The Wii U was able to be backwards compatible with the Wii. The Wii was backward compatible with the GameCube. But, you know, the Switch ditched everything for cartridges. I would love to see them have backward compatibility for the original Switch, just for people that want to get rid of their original Switch and get a Switch 2. Upgrading would be that much easier, so they don't have to fork out as much money. They can maybe get some money off of this first, and then they could get a Switch 2, making it a little bit more affordable for them. I think that's a good move. I think they know it's a good move. I think they'll likely stick with cartridges as well. I've seen that there's a newer technology for the little cartridges that stores more data, which would make loading times much better, and it's more cost effective to produce. So I think that's a no-brainer entirely. It essentially put them close to being on par with SSDs in terms of loading times. So I think all their first-party games would load really, really fast. I have seen really bad loading screens, even with like Tears of the Kingdom, that really turned me off from wanting to play it. Now that I've experienced it on the PlayStation 5, I really like the idea of no loading screens. So I think their new cartridges will likely take care of that problem. And if they're using those, it utilizes the same size cartridge. It just does some different stuff internally. So I think it would be a pretty easy thing to keep backward compatibility and keep the Nintendo Switch on Nintendo Switch 2. I think that's a really big deal for a lot of people. Maybe not so much for me, but I can see why it's so appealing. And one of the last things, I'm not sure if this will be the last thing, maybe, is going to be the online play. I think it's time for Nintendo to join the conversation for being an actual online service. They have a huge catalog with the Nintendo Switch, like online games catalog they've got. They've got the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the N64 and Game Boy games. That's awesome that they have all these titles you can access. But their online play is abysmal. And I think going into the next generation, we have tons of games that are online or online only or have a big online component that people love to play. Those make a lot of money. I don't know that Nintendo needs to get on that bandwagon and make a lot of games, but they do make some games that have online play, like Smash Ultimate, like Splatoon, like Mario Kart. They need to have better net play across the board. It's so trash that you get on Smash Ultimate and you have 5 frames of input delay across the board, straight up, no matter what you do. And that's horrible. You have modders out there modding the online to make it more playable, make it feel more like offline. Nintendo really needs to get with the times because their online play is horrible. And I would just really love to see them compete in the space. They already charge for online, so it's not very fun to pay for a service that doesn't improve the online ecosystem at all. It gives you access to a bunch of old retro games. Cool. I do like that. I like that it gives you access to DLCs for certain games too. I think that's a great plus. But they really need to improve their netcode and make it worthwhile because other consoles have been leaving them in the dust for a long time. I don't think that's something they can rest on their laurels for forever. I really don't think they can stay in the Stone Ages in terms of online play forever. I think they need to innovate and update. And if I saw that in the next console, I saw that from day one, that huge support and better net play across the board, I would be so excited. And I think everyone else would be as well. So I'll go one more thing here, my very last thing. They just need to have a few key franchises make a return pretty quickly. And I think that's a no-brainer. Everyone knows that. They know that. And I think they're planning on it. The biggest ones I see that they need to have pretty close to launch or in the launch window in like that first year, maybe 2 years, they need to have a new 3D Mario game. And I think that there have been reports I've seen that say that it's likely going to be a launch title for the Switch 2, which is perfect. Tears of the Kingdom came out for Switch not very long ago, so we're not getting a new Zelda game unless it's a remake. I think that would be great, a great way to put momentum into the Switch 2. Put that in the launch window somewhere, a remake of a Zelda game, maybe a Link to the Past. Something like that would be fantastic. But a mainline entry 3D Mario game would go crazy. They need to have Metroid Prime 4 as well in that launch window. I think we've waited long enough. Metroid Prime 1 Remastered came out and was a huge hit. I think they could be prolonging, since I've seen that the Switch 2 is likely delayed until first quarter of 2025, which I think is fine. I think that's the latest it should come out. It was projected to come out in September of this year, but delays and who knows what have kept it going back. But I think they want to focus on making sure they don't have production issues so more people can get their hands on it. But they really need to try and make that first half of the year at the very latest, because so many of the Switch hardware is really dated at this point. It has been for a couple years now, and I don't think they can keep riding that momentum forever. They also don't have a huge docket of games right now, but with this extra added window, they could launch Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered. They have enough time to do that to prep for hopefully Metroid Prime 4 making a return in that launch window. We also need Smash. We need a successor to Smash. It's due at this point. We have like the timeline for each game. I know Ultimate is the culmination. This is the last one. Sakurai's helming as well. So I understand why they're taking a little more time. If they're doing a reboot, it needs to be in the first year or two. It really does. And again, with good netcode, that could be a huge selling point for a new Smash game. If they're going to do Ultimate Deluxe, and they're going to add a ton more characters to it and balance the game some more, fine, then that needs to be a launch title, like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It really needs to be out right away, because we need a new Smash game. People love Smash. It's the best-selling fighting game for a reason. So we need a return of Smash. We need a new 3D Mario game. Metroid Prime 4 absolutely has to come out within that first year, 2 at the most. Otherwise, people are going to lose interest. I can only imagine they've released Metroid Prime Remastered to gauge interest in the property in general, and they're probably sitting on Metroid Prime Remastered 2 and 3 now, probably metering them out to kind of stall out the releasing of Metroid Prime 4. We need some other first-party games, some like maybe another Kirby game would be great. Princess Peach Showtime just came out, and you've got like tons of remasters coming out for the Switch to pad out its release window. We need some other first parties jumping in that launch window, the first couple years especially. Donkey Kong ought to make a return. I think another Yoshi game could be great, and another Kirby game, I think, would all really round out the first couple years of the Switch 2 to give it a whole lot of momentum to tide over between releases. And then hopefully they'll have the third-party support to get new games that are coming out as the Switch 2 is rolling out as well. If they can do that, the Switch 2 will not only be a success, but I think it will be a resounding success. I don't think the Switch 2 is positioned to be anywhere near what the Wii U did. In fact, I don't think it has any chance of being a poor selling console, as long as they don't screw up the things that I just talked about. I think those are fairly basic. I haven't asked for anything too crazy. I think the netcode is maybe the craziest thing I'm asking for. If Nintendo can follow these things, they don't need to iterate that much. I imagine they have a gimmick in mind for the Switch 2 that I'm unaware of, that people don't know yet. And I'm anxious to see what they're going to do with it. But I hope if it's a crazy gimmick that is really risky, I hope it doesn't impact a lot of the games so they can bail out if they need to. Like the 3DS did with a 3D vision thing. It was a cool gimmick, but after a while people were just keeping it off, myself included, and just rocking the games normally. They even came out with the 2DS because the 3D function was not that impactful. Hopefully if it's a gimmick like that, they can just ditch it, keep moving on. The hardware is still good with still lots of great experiences. So that's going to be what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see if I make more of these ones on my Tuesdays and Thursdays where I usually have videos off. I would like to, because I have a lot of fun with this and I like making videos for the channel. So if you like this, please leave a comment down below what you think about the Switch 2 and what you've heard about rumors and everything, what games you really want to see on the Switch 2, or any other random things you wanted to talk about. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next one.